Her life was shattered in seconds, her family was murdered, the system betrayed her, and grief became her only companion. But what she didn't know was that the truth was hiding behind a pair of dark glasses. This is the story of betrayal, justice, and rebirth. Stay with me till the end, because this isn't just about revenge, it's about rising from the ashes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if it touches your heart. Aria Coleman sat on a weathered bench in Willow Park, staring blankly at the gray spring sky. 3 months had passed since the accident, or what the police had coldly called an accident. 3 months since she buried the only 2 people who ever made life feel warm, her husband Daniel and their 7-year-old daughter Lily. The report was brief. A truck crossed the center line on Highway 59, smashed into their car, and fled. No suspects, no witnesses. Case closed. She was only 30, but the mirror showed a woman who had aged a decade overnight. Her once glossy curls hung limp. Her eyes were empty, as if light itself had abandoned her. She didn't cry anymore. The tears had dried weeks ago, replaced by a dull, aching hollowness that lived in her chest like a ghost. Debt swallowed their condo. Daniel's insurance barely scratched the mortgage. She sold their belongings one by one, her wedding ring, her mother's gold chain, his laptop, until all that remained were a few shirts and a suitcase. She searched for work, desperate and exhausted, but no one wanted a grieving woman with a gap-ridden resume. Then came the call that would change everything. Aria Coleman, we have a job offer. Live-in caretaker for a wealthy client. $3,000 a month. Private room, meals included. You'd start immediately. She hesitated. She had no experience in caregiving. It doesn't matter, the cheerful voice assured her. He just needs someone honest and quiet. You fit perfectly. The next morning, she packed her life into a single bag and took a cab to the address. The red brick estate was enormous, surrounded by iron gates and gardens that looked like they belonged to another world. Her last 200 went to that ride. The house manager, a stern woman named Dolores Vance, greeted her briskly. "This is Mr. Randall Covington's residence," she said. "You'll meet him tonight." Her room was bright, luxurious, white sheets, a private bath, sunlight pouring through the windows. It felt like a cruel joke. Yesterday she'd been in a peeling boarding house. Today she was in paradise, but inside she was still hollow. That evening she dressed in her last clean blouse and descended the grand staircase. Randall Covington sat at the far end of a long dining table, silver hair slicked back, dark glasses covering his eyes. His posture was stiff, deliberate. "Miss Coleman," he greeted softly, his voice deep and calm. "Please sit." She ate the first hot meal she'd had in weeks while he spoke gently. He had lost his sight 6 months earlier, he explained. He needed someone to read to him, accompany him, keep him company. Then his tone softened. "I know you've suffered a recent loss. Here, no one will ask you questions. You're safe." That night, she lay in a real bed for the first time in months. Fed. Warm, sheltered. But beneath the comfort, the pain remained, sharp and quiet. The first week passed in quiet routine. Mornings reading newspapers, afternoons walking in the garden, her arm gently guiding Randall's as she described tulips and sky. For the first time, structure returned to her days. Her grief didn't disappear, it simply learned to wait. Then, on the 7th night, came the knock. She opened her door to find Randall standing there, without his dark glasses. His brown eyes looked straight into hers. Alive. Sharp. Seeing. Aria's breath caught. "You can see?" "Yes," he replied calmly. "But if you want to know why, follow me, quietly." They descended to his private office. He locked the door twice, then sat behind a massive wooden desk. "I run Covington and Sons Construction," he began. 6 months ago, I witnessed a murder. 3 men beat a man in an alley, then shot him. They saw me watching. The next day, they came to my office. They knew everything, My family, my routines, they threatened to kill us all if I spoke. A week later, my chauffeur was killed in a hit and run. That's when I decided to fake blindness. A blind witness is no threat. Arya sat frozen, her heart pounding. The gang is led by Devin the Duke Sterling, Randall continued. He runs contraband, money laundering, contract killings. He has police, prosecutors, city hall, all in his pocket. No one touches him. And Daniel and Lily, she whispered. He met her gaze with quiet pain. They were witnesses too. 3 months ago, a businessman was murdered in broad daylight. Your husband and daughter saw it. Lily even took a photo of the getaway car. They went to the police. 2 days later, a truck hit them. The room blurred. The world tilted. Daniel hadn't crashed. He had been silenced. So had their little girl. Randall leaned forward. I found out through an old friend in the department. When I learned your name, I made sure this job offer reached only you. You deserve the truth. For months, rage had been buried beneath Arya's grief like embers under ash. Now, it ignited. I want them to pay, she whispered, her voice steel. Then you need a plan, Randall replied. And allies. The next morning, the sun rose over the manicured gardens, but something inside Arya had shifted. She wasn't just a widow anymore. She was a woman with purpose. She searched online late at night, scrolling through detective agencies. Most chased cheating spouses, but one stood out, Anthony Seward, a retired cop known for taking dangerous cases no one else would touch. When she received her first paycheck, she hid the envelope in her purse and set off downtown. The detective's office was modest, shelves of case files and law books lining the walls. A man with graying temples and razor-sharp eyes greeted her. "My name is Arya Coleman," she said, forcing strength into her voice. 3 months ago, my husband and daughter were murdered. I need proof. I need justice. He listened intently, jotting notes, asking precise questions. When she placed $10,000 on his desk, his jaw tightened. "If what you're saying is true," he said, "this is dangerous, but I'll take the case." For the first time in months, Arya walked outside with something other than grief in her chest. Hope. Days turned into weeks. On the surface, Arya's life flowed in an orderly rhythm. Breakfast at 8, newspaper readings for Randall, afternoon walks through the tulip gardens, soft dinners in the grand hall. But beneath that quiet routine, something powerful was growing. Each night when the mansion fell silent, Arya sat alone in her room, searching on her old phone for updates. Anthony Seward, the detective, kept his word. His first call came 5 days after their meeting. "I'm digging through Sterling's contacts in City Hall," his steady voice told her. "Some interesting leads are surfacing. Be patient." The second call, a week later, carried a cautious excitement. "I found someone." A former gang associate. "He's scared, but he's willing to talk." "Give me time." The third call, on the 13th day, shifted the air completely. "I've found financial records, money laundering through Sterling shell companies." "It's real, Arya. This isn't just smoke. There's fire." Arya hung up the phone that night with trembling hands. For months she'd lived in the dark, powerless. Now, evidence was emerging from the shadows, piece by piece, like shards of glass forming a mirror reflecting the face of the man who had stolen everything from her. Then came the call that would set everything into motion. "Arya," Anthony's voice crackled through the line, tinged with urgency. "I need to meet you. Tonight, I found something big. Corner Bistro on Main Street, 7 p.m. Come alone. And make sure no one's following you." Her pulse quickened. She told Dolores Vance she needed to run errands, then slipped into a taxi as dusk painted the city in gold and gray. The bistro was small, tucked beneath an aging apartment block, dimly lit with warm light bulbs strung across the ceiling. Anthony sat in the back corner, facing the room like a man who never stopped being a cop. A thick folder lay on the table before him. As she slid into the seat across from him, he leaned forward and lowered his voice. I found the crack in Sterling's fortress. He opened the folder revealing photos, handwritten notes, and a series of official court documents. 3 years ago, Lionel Leo Thompson, Sterling's right-hand man, was arrested with a massive shipment of drugs. The evidence was ironclad. He was sentenced to 5 years. But after just 1 year, he was mysteriously paroled. Somebody greased the right palms. Likely Sterling. Anthony's voice hardened. Thompson kept meticulous records of every deal, every murder, every payment. Names, dates, amounts. His ex-wife Brenda told me he hid those notebooks as insurance in case Sterling ever turned on him. And guess what? Arya leaned in, holding her breath. She's willing to testify, he said. She hates Sterling. She blames him for destroying her husband's life. She'll tell us exactly where those notebooks are hidden. Arya's fingers tightened on the table's edge. And Thompson? Anthony's eyes darkened. Dead, 2 months ago. Official story, drunk, fell off a bridge, no witnesses. Cameras conveniently malfunctioning. My gut says Sterling had him killed to erase loose ends, but he never found those notebooks. Brenda has clues. If we get those records, we can bury him and his entire operation in court. For a moment, the sounds of clinking cutlery and quiet chatter in the bistro faded. Arya could see it, Sterling behind bars, his empire crumbling under the weight of his own crimes. What happens next? She asked. Anthony flipped to a new page. We need an honest cop. Someone inside the system, clean, willing to take this case despite the risk. She frowned. Do those exist anymore? A faint smile crossed his face. 1. Detective Ethan Bell. Special Investigations. 35. He transferred here from Seattle 6 months ago. Reputation, unbribable. He's gone after powerful people before. My contacts checked him out. He's clean. Arya's heartbeat quickened. Trust was dangerous. One wrong person, and she'd be silenced just like Daniel. Anthony read her hesitation. No guarantees, but if we want legal justice, we need him. I've already set up a meeting. Wednesday, 10 a.m. His office at the DA's building. Brenda will be there too, ready to swear her statement. We bring the notebooks, her testimony, the financial trail, the witnesses. If he takes it, we have a real case. Arya nodded slowly. I'll be there. 2 days later, she stood in front of the cold gray concrete of the district attorney's building. Her palms were damp. Beside her stood Anthony and Brenda, a fragile-looking woman in her 40s with nervous eyes, clutching her handbag as if it held her life. Detective Bell's office was stark and functional, files stacked neatly, a coffee mug half empty on the desk. Bell himself rose to greet them. Tall, broad-shouldered, cropped blonde hair, blue eyes sharp as steel. Anthony told me the basics, he said, gesturing for them to sit. Let's hear the full story. For an hour, Anthony laid out everything, the witness testimonies, the false accident, the financial trails, Brenda's account of Leo's records. Bell listened silently, flipping through documents, taking notes. His face was unreadable, but his eyes missed nothing. Brenda finally spoke, voice trembling. Leo told me, if anything happened to him, to go to the farmhouse, his parents' place in Fairport. There's a hidden compartment in the floorboards of the old barn. That's where the notebooks are. 15 minutes of heavy silence followed as Bell reviewed every piece of evidence. Then, finally, he looked up, locking eyes with Arya. This is enough to open a criminal case, he said gravely. If half of this checks out, Sterling's going down. But understand this, once we move, there's no turning back. Sterling will fight like a cornered animal. He will come after anyone involved. Arya's voice didn't waver. He already took everything from me. I'm not backing down. Bell nodded once. Then we move forward. I'll take the case. The next weeks blurred into a storm of hidden operations. Ethan Bell and his team raided the farmhouse and unearthed 5 thick notebooks written in meticulous handwriting. Dates, names, transactions, hid contracts. It was a gold mine. Brenda officially testified under oath, her story matching the records perfectly. 2 ex-gang members surfaced, willing to talk in exchange for protection. A criminal case was opened: racketeering, large-scale contraband, contract killings. Sterling's kingdom began to tremble. But as the investigation expanded, so did the danger. Arya often felt unseen eyes following her when she went into town. Late at night, headlights sometimes lingered outside the mansion gate a little too long. One night, while walking with Randall in the garden, she whispered, "They're watching us." "I know," he murmured, never breaking his performance as the blind man. Sterling's network is nervous. But this is the price of truth. 2 months later, Ethan Bell called her at dawn. His voice was electric with triumph. "It's over, Arya. We got them." At 6 a.m. that morning, Sterling's mansion was raided. Devon, the Duke, Sterling, and 5 of his top lieutenants were arrested. The notebooks, financial records, and testimonies left no escape routes. When Arya heard the words, she collapsed onto her bed, sobbing. Not the broken sobs of grief, but the fierce, shaking cries of a woman who had fought through hell and finally seen light. Spring returned, but this time, the air felt different. The investigation had shaken the city. Headlines buzzed with news of Devon, the Duke, Sterling's arrest, the untouchable kingpin finally caged. His fall was like a domino topple. Officials who had taken his money were now under investigation, and fear rippled through the underworld. For Arya, the weeks leading up to the trial were a blur of legal meetings, testimonies, and restless nights. Ethan Bell called her regularly with updates. "The case is strong," he'd say, "but Sterling's lawyers will try everything." She attended every court session. The courtroom was packed: journalists, victims' families, curious citizens, and there, behind bulletproof glass, sat Devon Sterling and his men. They looked so ordinary in their dark suits, like businessmen, but Arya saw through their faces. She saw the night Daniel and Lily were stolen from her. The prosecutor laid out the case, piece by piece. Leo Thompson's notebooks, 5 volumes of meticulous criminal history. Witness testimonies, financial records tracing millions in dirty money. Brenda's statement, former gang members revealing how Sterling ordered hits like clockwork. The defense tried every trick: discredit witnesses, claim planted evidence, stall proceedings. But there was too much. Every lie collapsed under the weight of paper, ink, and courage. One morning, Brenda Thompson took the stand. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. She told the court about Leo's double life, Sterling's manipulation, and the notebooks hidden beneath old floorboards. Arya watched her with quiet respect. 2 women who had lived in fear, now standing in the open light. Weeks passed. And then came verdict day. The courtroom was suffocatingly silent. The judge read for nearly an hour, charge after charge, evidence after evidence. Arya sat in the front row, heart hammering against her ribs. When the words finally came, they echoed through the chamber like a church bell. Devon Sterling is hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison with the confiscation of all assets. His accomplices followed, 15 to 22 years each. The silence broke. Applause, gasps, tears. People embraced. Arya covered her face and sobbed. For the first time in nearly a year, her tears weren't born of grief, but relief. Justice had been served. After the verdict, Ethan Bell approached her quietly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. She shook her head. "We did it. You, Anthony, Brenda, Randall, everyone who didn't look away." He gave a small, warm smile. "Still, you were the fire that started it. Life didn't magically return to the way it was. It never does." But slowly, Arya rebuilt. Randall Covington offered her something she never expected. "Arya," he said one evening over dinner on the mansion terrace, "you no longer have to work as a caretaker. That was always just a cover. But I'd like you to stay as part of my company." We need honest people. How about accounting? She hesitated. Randall, I haven't worked in years. I trust you, he interrupted, and trust is worth more than any experience. She accepted. Weeks later, Aria stepped into the Covington & Sons downtown office as a junior accountant. It was strange at first, walking through bustling hallways, her name on an ID badge. But slowly, work became a rhythm. It didn't erase the past, but it gave her something new to hold. With her first full paycheck, she rented a small apartment on the 5th floor of a new building overlooking a quiet park. She furnished it simply: warm lights, soft rugs, shelves for the books Lily used to love. For the first time in months, she had a home again. Ethan Bell stayed in touch. Sometimes, after work, they'd meet at a small cafe near her apartment. They'd talk about the case, the city, the absurdity of life. There was something between them, quiet, growing, patient. Ethan never rushed her. He simply stood by her, steady and honest. Months later, on a golden autumn evening, they walked along the Riverwalk. Lights shimmered on the water, people laughed nearby, life moved on. "Aria," he said, stopping under a lamppost, his voice soft but firm. "I admire you, truly. What you went through, most would have broken, but you stood up. You fought, and you stayed kind." Her breath caught. She'd never expected words like that. "I'd like to be part of your life," he continued. "Not to replace anyone, just to walk beside you, if you'll let me." Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but from something gentler. She squeezed his hand. "I need time," she whispered. "You have all the time you need," he said, smiling. Their bond grew slowly. Walks in the park, shared dinners, quiet laughter that returned to her life like a forgotten song. A year later, Ethan proposed by the same river where they'd spoken that night. "I love you," he said simply. Not as a replacement, but as a future. She said yes. They married in spring, a modest ceremony with family and the people who had fought beside them: Randall, Anthony, Brenda. She wore a simple ivory dress. The sky was clear. For the first time in years, her smile reached her eyes. Months later, she discovered she was pregnant. The news brought unexpected tears. Could she love again after losing Lily? Ethan's joy erased her doubt. "This child isn't replacing anyone," he whispered, holding her. "He's a new light." When their son was born, she named him Jamal Daniel Bell. Jamal for beauty. Daniel, to honor the man whose courage started it all. Randall became like a grandfather, spoiling the boy with toys and love. Ethan held their child every night, singing off-key lullabies. Sometimes, when the city was quiet, Aria stood on the balcony at night, looking at the stars. She whispered to Lily and Daniel, "I'll never forget you. Your love lives here, in me, in him, in us." The pain never fully disappeared, but it became part of her, like an old scar that no longer hurt but reminded her of the battles she survived. She had walked through fire, and she hadn't just survived. She had rebuilt. If this story touched you, if you believe that truth, courage, and love can still rise above darkness, share it. Let someone who needs hope hear Aria's journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which moment gave you goosebumps. Your support helps bring more powerful life stories like this to the screen. Thank you for watching.